Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel at Alexandru. On this channel you will find 1. Quality news, 2. Animals, reptiles, snakes, plus other short clips 3. Business and economy, 4. Moments of relaxation, wonderful places in the world, 5. Cryptocurrencies and everything about cryptocurrencies, 6. News vertical bar information about cryptocurrencies plus methods of making money online on the net, and a new podcast visible on my YouTube channel at Alexandru. 7. Culinary networks and traditional foods from various countries. In today's clip we will talk about what is the difference between viruses and bacteria. Generalities. What is the difference between viruses and bacteria? There are many differences between viruses and bacteria. These refer both to their relative sizes, reproduction methods, lifespan, and the effectiveness of treatments. Compared to viruses, bacteria are much more complex. The bacterium is a living single-celled microorganism, which has both ribonucleic acid and deoxyribonucleic acid in its genetic code. Bacteria are covered by a cell wall made up of polysaccharides, proteins and lipids. They have a rigid cell wall and a thin cell membrane, which surrounds the cytoplasm and synthesizes its own proteins. The bacterium is at least 100 times larger than an ordinary virus. There are 4 types of bacteria, classified according to their shape: round, kochi, elongated, bacilli, curved, spirals, spirochetes and vibrios, and filamentous, actinomycetes. The virus is an inframicrobial pathogen composed of a central part, called the viral genome, which can be DNA, or RNA, and a sheath or protective covering of protein nature, called the capsid. Viruses have no cell membrane and no cytoplasm. They do not synthesize proteins, but acquire them from the host cell. The shape of viruses is varied, but in general they can have one of the following shapes: spherical or spheroidal, influenza, poliomyelitis virus, quadrilateral prismatic, variola virus, stick-shaped or sperm-shaped bacteriophages. The main differences between viruses and bacteria. A major difference between viruses and bacteria is the method of reproduction. A bacterium is a complete and autonomous unit from the point of view of reproduction. Bacteria usually reproduce asexually, by division. At the right moment, the bacterium will divide the DNA, or RNA genetic material, into 2 parts. Cell walls will be built around these 2 new bacteria that will form. The multiplication of bacteria involves several phases: the latent phase, the exponential phase, the stationary phase, and the decline phase. This is the mechanism by which bacteria survive in almost any environment on Earth, including places that have no life, such as rocks or plastic surfaces. A virus, on the other hand, cannot reproduce without a living host. A virus can remain dormant for thousands of years, until it comes into contact with the right host. After entering the host's body, the virus attaches itself to a cell it penetrates. Once inside a living cell, the virus replaces the original DNA, or RNA commands of the cell with its own genetic instructions. These instructions usually involve the production of as many copies of the virus as possible. After the individual cell has fulfilled its role, it explodes, disintegrates, and thus thousands of copies of the original virus are spread to other cells. 99% of all known bacteria are considered beneficial to humans, or at least harmless. Their main role is the decomposition of organic matter and the destruction of parasites harmful to the body. A fairly small percentage of bacteria is considered harmful to the human body. These include Streptococcus or E. coli. Bacteria feed on tissues of the human body and eliminate toxins and acids. These toxins and irritating acids can cause many problems associated with bacterial infections. When the bacteria are destroyed with antibiotics, the infections should disappear quickly. On the other hand, most viruses have no beneficial purpose for the body. Their sole mission is to create as many viruses as possible to ensure the survival of the virus strain. When a virus enters the human body, it looks for a suitable host and multiplies without warning. Thus, thousands of cells will produce new viruses. Until the body defends itself naturally and becomes aware of the invasion, the virus can have significant control over vital organs and tissues. The human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and the Ebola virus are examples of dangerous viruses that can seriously affect the human body. Differences in treatment. The treatment and the way of medical intervention are quite different with regard to viruses and bacteria. Bacteria are alive, which means they can be killed by some form of chemical agent. Antibiotics are chemical compounds that kill bacteria by destroying their cell walls or neutralizing their ability to reproduce. The reason for that, doctors prescribe long-term treatment with antibiotics, in the case of patients affected by bacteria, is to create an environment in which bacteria cannot live. Although Often, bacteria develop a tolerance to a certain antibiotic. The effect is similar to that of using the insecticide in the case of insects. Viruses, in comparison, are not considered living creatures. They cannot be killed in the same way that antibiotics destroy bacteria. In fact, the treatment of viral infections, in most cases, does not require the application of any treatment. The disease must follow its course until the body can defend itself. Antiviral treatments, when they exist, work on the principle of blocking the virus' own destructive methods. Thus, the RNA or DNA component of the virus can be inactivated, without affecting the cell from a genetic point of view, or the methods by which the virus penetrates the cell wall can be inactivated. Antiviral drugs are not effective against all viruses, which is why certain diseases, such as AIDS or Ebola, still affect millions of people worldwide. Scientists are trying to understand the basic structure and genetic programming of viruses. Only by understanding how a virus works can a treatment be developed to destroy it. Instead, for the treatment of most of the bacteria that trigger various diseases, the challenge is to discover the most effective antibiotics for its destruction. An important aspect is the fact that the inappropriate use of antibiotics has bad consequences for the human body. It can induce resistant species of bacteria, which no longer respond to the usual treatments. For this reason, antibiotics should only be administered with medical advice. YouTube channel Alexandru. Thank you for watching this video clip to the end. I hope it was a video clip from which you learned something. Understand, if you like this video clip, don't forget **** subscribe, give a like, a share on social networks, so your friends know cut this clip.